Hello and welcome back to Getting Started with Laravel 4. In the previous lesson, we set up the data model for our blog. Now in this lesson, we're going to create the admin panel. But first let's clean up our folders and make them match the structure of our application. Let's do the post views first. Well, we have all these admin views here, but they live inside of a post folder. I would like them to live in an admin folder instead, so we'll just create that. Here's our admin folder, and then we'll just take the post folder as a whole and drag it in there. Just like so. Now let's have a look at our admin controller. Okay, now this is a bit tricky. I would really like to have two post controllers, one for the public facing site and one for the admin panel. Now the one we've created just now is for the admin panel, but how can we tell the two apart? Well, we could for instance rename this one to be called admin post controllers, and then of course we'd have to open it up and change the class name as well. And inside of our routes file, we need to make sure that we call the admin post controller instead of the post controller. Cool, well I actually think this does the trick. Now we have room for another post controller here. But if you're building a small application like us, then this is an okay solution. If you're building anything bigger, you may want to consider creating a new admin folder. And just grab that admin post controller and drag it in there. And that's okay because you can have controllers in different subfolders here. There's just one thing I would like you to note. If you set it up like this, then each controller must have its own unique name. And that's because they all live in the same namespace. Okay, so that's it for the folder structure. Now inside of our routes file, I would like to prefix this post controller with admin, so it will be available through admin posts. In order to do so, we'll just create a route group. Here's the array for our group attributes, followed by an anonymous function. Okay, let's make sure we set a prefix of admin, and for now I think that should do. So we'll just take our route and drag it in here like so. Okay, let's run PHP artisan routes again. Well, the route prefix took care of our URLs and it also renamed our routes. But there's still one problem. You see, at the moment, Laravel will not be able to find this admin post controller since it lives in a subfolder. I'll show you. When I hit that route, I get a not found HTTP exception. And this is because the admin folder is not in our path. So we'll go to the terminal and run composer dump autoload. Now this will make Composer look through all the folders again and update its autoload file. And now that it knows about our admin post controller, we can rerun this route. And actually now it gives us another error, which means our post controller can be found. Okay, well I think it's time to set up our CRUD admin post controller. Well, let's have a look at the index method first and see if it matches our needs. Well, we would like this page to display a list of posts that we can click to edit them. Well, all the posts are retrieved here, then they pass to a view. We only need to update the view path as it lives in an admin folder now. Cool, and I think that's actually all we need. Okay, let's have a look at the create method. All that needs to do is return a view. That's right, the view will hold a form to create a new post. Then the store method. Now this is a bit more intricate. First we create a validator and we pass all the post data into that validator, and then we add the post rules. Now the post rules, as you will recall, is a static property set inside of our post model. You see? Open up post model and there's our rules right there. Cool, then we run the validator, and if it fails, we redirect back with our errors that come from the validator and with the old input. Then, if we get to here, the validation must have succeeded and we can safely create a post using the data we got from the post input. And then we'll return a redirect to the route admin posts.index. So yes, we did need to update this path, but that's just about all. Cool, the next it's edit and update. And that's just about the same as create. So we just update this path here and we'll update this path here as well. Now you will probably notice that we have some code duplication here. Now we could abstract that away, and you know what? Maybe in a larger application I would. For now, I think it'll do fine. Cool, the last method is destroy, and that does exactly what you think it would do. It destroys a post and then it redirects back to admin.posts.index. So that's all for our controller really. Time to build our views. Okay, so what do we need for views? Let's close all this out. Inside of our admin folder, I'll create a new folder called layouts, or underscore layouts to be more precise. Inside of it, let's create our admin layout. We'll call that admin.blade.php, and I'll just quickly insert an HTML5 snippet. And that's just got the usual suspect tags. We've got our header here, we've got an empty body and an HTML closing tag. All right, let's set up our title, My Awesome Admin Panel. Okay, now I'd like to bring in some styling, and we'll use Laravel to do that. There's a Laravel HTML class with a style method, and that will just include a style sheet. Okay, and in our case, we'll just create that in css/admin.css. Okay, before we start setting up the body contents, let's create that CSS file first. I'll go inside of the public folder, create a new directory called CSS, and inside of that directory, I'll create a new file called admin.css. Now, because this is not a course about CSS or HTML, I've just put together a little CSS file that I stored on GitHub. You see it lives here at this URL, but you can also find it in the source code files, and I'll include a link in the lesson notes. Now, what you want to do is click the raw button here, then copy all of this CSS, go back to your CSS file, and just paste it in like so. Right, so that takes care of our CSS there. Time to set up a little layout structure. I'll just create a header tag containing a div with a class of container, and that will hold an h1 tag. And for those of you wondering what all this autocomplete magic is, well, it's called Emmet. It's a lightning fast way to create HTML and CSS code. It's integrated into PHP Storm, but you can get it as a plugin for a whole bunch of other editors as well, including Sublime Text, okay? Well, the h1 tag will hold the name for our admin panel. So again, that will be my awesome admin panel. Okay, now for the main content of our application, that will be a main tag with a class of container. Now inside, all I need to do is yield the content section. So let's do that now. Now the last part of our layout file will be a footer tag holding a div with a class of container. And inside, I'll just paste some copyright data. Okay, just to draw your attention to it, here we're using Laravel's braces to echo the result of a PHP native function. Okay, well, cool. I think that just about does it for our layout file. Let's set up our view files now. We'll start with admin posts index.blade. Let's remove the boilerplate code, and I'll just paste in my Laravel view snippet, and I need to update our extend path. So now if all's well, we should have a view on our admin post URL. Let's check that. And that's actually looking quite good. Okay, we can carry on. Okay, now remember we have a post variable containing all of our posts. So we'll just do a conditional. If count posts, and then we'll just close out that if statement. And then inside of that, we can do a for each posts as post, and we need to close out that for each statement as well. Okay, now we're going to create an unordered list of our posts. So let's do a UL, close out that UL, and then add in a list item for every post. Okay, now what we want to do is display all the post titles, and each title should link to its edit method. Okay, now we'll open up our braces and create a link to route. Now the route name will be the first parameter, admin.post.edit. Now the post title will be the second parameter, and as a third parameter we need to pass in the post ID because it needs to be fed to our actual admin.post.edit route. Okay, so let's check in the browser to see if this actually all works. Well, we have our post titles here, which is good, and then when I click one of those, well, that actually brings me to the proper edit URL. Cool, let's set up our second view. I'll just close this all out and open up that edit view that we just saw. Again, we'll clear out the boilerplate code, paste in our view snippet, and update the view path. Okay, now inside of our content section, let's first add an h1. Let's have that read edit post. Okay, now we need to open up our edit form. We'll do form model as we need form model binding. The first parameter will be post. And remember, this is the post model that's actually being sent to this view. Then we'll need an array holding our attributes. First of all, we'll set our route, and that will be an array holding our route's name, admin post update, and we need to pass in the post ID for that as well. And then, and this is very important, we need to set this forms method to put. Well, of course, we need to close out this form as well, so let's do that first. Okay, now we could create the form content right here, but I think I'd rather include a partial. So let's create a folder called _partials and create a form.blade.php view file in there. So now we can set up our form content here and include it inside of our view. And just to check to see if we didn't make any mistakes there, let's load it up in the browser. Cool. Okay, now the reason I'm doing this is because I know that the content for the edit form will be exactly the same as the content for the create form. Right, they will need a different form open tag because they post to different routes, but the contents will be exactly the same. Okay, for now I'll create an unordered list with a single list item. And inside of that list item, I'll create my first form field. Okay, now to make sure form model binding works, I need to give my inputs the same names as the columns inside of my database. So the first one will be for user underscore ID. Let's create a label for that one. It'll be for user underscore ID and we'll call it author. Next, we need to create a select box, to select the authors from. So we'll do form select. That'll be for user ID. And now we need a way to pass in a key value pair array to populate the options with. Well, Eloquent's got your back. On the user model, we'll call a lists method which will return a key value pair array. Now we want name as the value and ID as the key. And then lastly, I would like to display the first of our errors for our user ID field, and let's just wrap that into a p tag with a class of error. Okay, let's see if we're on the right track. Fire up the browser and reload. Well, there's our select box and it looks like it's working. Cool. Tell you what we'll do. Let's just duplicate these lines here and carry on. Okay, now the field we want to display here is the title field. So we'll just update that for label, text, and the first error. And then we need to display a label text of title as well. Now as for the input, well, that will be a text input and it doesn't need a second parameter. So we can just get rid of that altogether. Okay, now remember we need an input for body as well. So we'll just copy these lines again and update the title field everywhere. Now we want the label to read body and we want the input type to be a text area. Okay, and now all that's left to add to our form is a submit button. So copy these lines again and we'll just strip everything out and make sure we have a submit button there that says save. Okay, let's check this form inside of the browser. Well, it looks cool and it's loading our database content. When I empty this out, let's see if the validation rules work as well. Well, yeah, almost, but I think I made a typo there. Just go back and you see I did a semicolon here and that should be a colon. Let's just update that for every message, like so. Okay, now when I go back and repost, sure enough, that gives a proper message. Cool. Now we checked our admin post controller before and all our methods seems to be in order. So if all's well, then I should actually be able to save this post. Okay, so let's just give that a new title and save it out. And sure enough, here's our updated title. Click it again, make sure we link it to another author and alter the body as well. And now if all's well, then that info should have been updated as well. And sure enough, it has. Okay, well I think it's time we actually coded the create form. Okay, now to do so, I'll just copy all the code inside of edit and open up create and make sure I paste it in there. Now, of course, we need to alter this a bit. Edit will have to be create and then we need to adjust our form open tag as well. We don't need any model binding, so we can just use form open. We can get rid of the post variable there. And of course, we need to update our route. Now, the route that we want to post to is admin post store. And that does not need the post ID as a parameter, so we can get rid of this altogether. Also, we need another method, namely post. But then since that's the default method for an open tag anyway, we can safely remove this all. And I think that's just it. Let's see if we can actually create a post, shall we? We will need to hit post create. And wouldn't you know, there's our form. Okay, let's pick an author, Ronaldo. Let's give the post a title and let's give it a body as well. We'll just save it out. And then it looks like that went well because here is our newly created post. When we open that up, we can safely edit it and just save it out again. You know what? Why don't we add a button to create a new post at the top of this list here? Right, that'll have to be in index.blade.php. Okay, here we'll create a title saying post. And right after that, we'll create a link linking to the route admin posts create. And let's just use create new post as a label for that link. Okay, cool. We have most of our CRUD functionality in place. All that's left is to destroy certain posts. Okay, now wouldn't it be nice if inside of our list we had a little button here saying delete? Well, the problem with this is it cannot be a normal link because if we have a look at our routes, the destroy route actually expects an HTTP delete request. But then what we could do is create a form here with a method of delete and that would take care of it. Okay, enough talking. Let's open up a form tag here. Now what we want to do is link to a route called admin.post.destroy and make sure we paste in the post ID there as well. Now, like we said, the method will have to be delete, and I'll just give this form a class of destroy, just to be able to style it. Now this form will only contain a single input and that's a submit button called delete, and of course we need to close out the form as well. Okay, let's review this. Made a typo here and I think a typo there. And now when we reload this in the browser, here's our delete buttons. And then if we actually click one like this, then that should delete our post and it works. Okay, cool. Well, that's all our CRUD functionality in place here. In the next lesson, we'll set up authentication for our admin panel. I'll see you there.